everyone. Shirishisa, Nati, Kirikiri, Sesari, Juchangashkami, Deditri, Kirikiri, Shkoigu, Karacho, Nahuka, Lakota, Dutse. Good morning, how are you all? My name is Tasha Frida-Mousseau. I am Wichita Highland cattle from Oklahoma, but also Hunka'augua, Lakota. I live in Porcupine, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And my Hunka'augua parents are Rick and Etheline, two dogs. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Super excited to see so many relatives in the crowd. I didn't really know what to expect. This is my first CultureCon, and so first one, but you get to speak at it, and so that's awesome. So I was very excited about the concept of CultureCon and being here in community with you all today. So what I would like to do is really start the way that we would start things in our communities. So with a wosape, words of encouragement. And to that end, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being intentionally here today to develop yourselves, to develop the community, making that investment of your time to spend with us today and to listen to us and to share a part of who you are and your spirit with us. You know, it is really apropos that we're having CultureCon Chesapa right now at this time and in this space. Some of our relatives have spoken today about many of our values and the things that we do and the sacredness of this area that we all get to call home. And so part of the ceremonies and things that we do here in this area is that we have sacred site visits that go along with the constellations. They are guided by our ancestors, our animal relatives, and the land itself. And at this time of year, one of the teachings that I've had is that this was traditionally a time of planning for our people, planning for the future. And so we go and we visit Bear Butte at this time, and we make offerings and we plan for the future. And so while we're not at Bear Butte, we're all here together, planning for the future, envisioning what that looks like for each of us, our communities, and our families. And so it's very appropriate that we're here at this time, and I don't think that that is by happenstance. So again, thank you all for being in this space and planning for the future with us. I do have some handwritten notes because I was listening to some of our relatives speak earlier, and I was born in the 80s. So we do pen and paper. So just forgive that. One of the things that I was thinking about as I came to be a part of this presentation is really defining on an individual basis, what does vision mean to us? I think that's the foundational element of, you know, visioning in different versions. What does that vision look like? But then also, what parts of our identities are guiding that vision? Who are we at a very fundamental level? Because while all of you are a part of organizations, human beings make up organizations. So who are we as human beings? And I think that's what the other presenters have shared today, is who they are as humans, and that's part of what I'm going to share with you as well. Definitely going to talk about the amazing work that I get to do, but at a very fundamental level, I'm Hujuta Changwashkami, Sacred Medicine Circle woman. That is who I am in my heart and my spirit. And so this word that you see on the screen is the Lakota word for dream. I think that could be translated to vision as well. But really want us all to take a moment to center and ground and think about what are our dreams? You know, what is the Woihanble that we have as we look to the future? In addition to that, you know, we got to hear from Jessie just before the break and about her visions as a young person in her community. And I was thinking about that. One of my favorite quotes is from Kaka Sitting Bull, who's from her community. And he says, let us put our minds together and see what kind of future we can make for our children. And funny enough, he's on my skirt today as well. I think you guys probably didn't know you're going to also have an Indigenous fashion show. So very glad that I am a part of that and was able to come correct. But he's on my skirt, and so I love that quote because a lot of my hard work is with youth and families, but also just thinking about the future as a whole. Who are we? What are we doing to make a better future? One thing that I've taught my children is that every day we want to be a better person than we were the day before. That can be very incremental, very small changes and decisions, but that intentionality and reminding of that has really laid a foundation for the young women that they're becoming, and I think it can be a foundation for all of us as we move through the world in all of these different spaces that we align. So who am I? As I said, I'm Hijuta Chungleshkami, Sacred Medicine Circle woman. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, an auntie, try to be just an overall good relative to whoever I am, and I'm a wife. So very excited, just got married the 2nd of this month. My wife is in the audience. My wife is one of my greatest inspirations. She is the vice president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and part of the reason that we fell in love is because of our heart for the people and the conversations and changes that we want to see for the future generations. So definitely had to shout her out and super excited about that. I'm a change maker. I'm a little iffy on calling myself that, but that's what I've heard. So I'm gonna go ahead and share that, just because, as Shante said, you don't really talk about yourself a lot in those ways, try to be very humble, but that is something that I work toward, is creating positive change in our communities. Lawyer, law trained by nature, also an advocate. I come from a long line of political activists, starting in this area with my grandmother and her little brother participating in Wounded Knee 1973, but also working across Indian country for justice and equality for all people. I try to be an advocate in any space that I am, whether that's the PTA with my children. I like to call the school, you can ask anyone. They're probably ready for my daughter to graduate. But for my children, to just trying to be a voice for the voiceless in any way that I can. And then I love to call myself a spiritual gangster. That is something that I take pride in, because I really lay I invest a lot of my resources in being a student of our culture and our spirituality, because that's what gives me strength. That's what allows me to maintain when my vision does go in a different version, right? That's what grounds me, the identity of who we are. So I'm also my grandmother's granddaughter. You can see her here. As I mentioned, I come from a long line of political activists and got to go around with her. I like to tell this story that when I was little, I would always go to protests. And again, was born in the 80s, so she would give me a roll of quarters, she'd give me a list of people's names I need to call if she got thrown in jail. And so, as time went on, also technology changed. So then I got a phone card and a list of names of who to give if she was in jail. She never got thrown in when I was there. But she is my greatest inspiration. She still, although she's no longer in this world, continues to guide me, and I try to seek to live a life that she and the rest of my ancestors would be proud of, make those decisions. And so this is she and I, we went everywhere together. I should say, Tosh, you and I are partners. And again, much like Tante, I guess I would call myself a conference and a protest baby. I would go everywhere with her and really soak in things that were going on around me, how people were interacting with systems and places of employment and cities and things like that. And so I tried to take the approach that she did, which was give everyone room to move with dignity. So when I approach a problem or a challenge or a different version of what I think things should be, I try to look at that and think about the ways in which people can still have the freedom to move with dignity and how we can move forward together. So my journey is that I was born to teen parents. I was born to an African American father and a Native American mother during a time when that wasn't as common as it is now. And the Fact of the matter is that my parents were not in a space to fully rear me in the way that I think both of them would have liked to. My dad was abusive to my mom, and my grandmother quickly removed me from that situation and stepped in, and she intentionally parented me. She intentionally surrounded me by culture and all of the protective factors that I needed, and I think being biracial, I needed a little bit more support back then because it was hard at that time, and it's still hard to this day. I talk to all of my daughters about it. I have 2 daughters by birth. One is 19 and a sophomore at the University of Denver, and one is 17 and a senior at Red Cloud Indian School. And being biracial within the Indigenous community can be hurtful. It can be hurtful in a way that I've never experienced. I expect that from other groups of people, but amongst our own people, it can be very hurtful. And so really instilling in me to be proud of who I am on both sides, and really laying that foundation of the cultural identity, which again supports me to this day. So the story goes that when I was little, or let me go back. To that end, there were things that she did to really make me know that I was worthy and that I was important and that I was meaningful. And she filled my cup. And part of what she did is that when I had children's books, then none of the people looked like me. So before she would give me a book, and I was an avid reader, she would color all the people brown and give them black hair so that I could see myself in literature. She did those types of things so that I could be strong and know who I am. And one thing that she did that really impacted my life is that she knew that an Indian woman was going to argue in federal court. And she took me to see that, and they said that I was 5, and then when I saw that, I said, I'm gonna do that. That's what I'm gonna do. And so that was my vision, that I was gonna go to law school and become an attorney from that very young age. But life happens, right? And so I took a little bit longer way to that journey. The version of my vision was very different. I attended law school later in life. So I went to undergrad at the University of Oklahoma. Did not plan on doing that either because my grandma went there, my mom went there, did not want to go there. Went to the University of Oklahoma and graduated with that. I also in a former life was a military spouse, which again, coming from a very politically active family, never thought that would be the case. And being a military spouse, particularly of an officer of color, was very different. It was a culture shock. Moving place to place was very difficult for me. And one thing that I did was try to tell myself and my children, this is an adventure. Try to talk myself into that. And it worked most of the time. But the military also afforded me the opportunity to fully invest in my children. I didn't work, and so I was a stay-at-home mom and had that opportunity. So there were blessings to that as well. When I was at Fort Carson, Colorado, I was working part-time and momming full-time, and my spouse was deployed, and I couldn't go to law school. No matter what, I said, it doesn't matter if I'm 60 years old, I'm gonna go to law school, but I couldn't. I didn't have the support. And I had 2 small children that I was essentially raising on my own. And so my job, I worked for USAA, any military people, best company ever. And they would pay for grad school. So I said, well, you know what? I'm just gonna go to grad school. They will pay for it, so I am going. And advocated for myself because the major I wanted, they didn't pay for it, got them to pay for it. And so that was where my vision took a turn because that's not what my ultimate goal, my ultimate vision for myself. But I did go to grad school, graduated, and then finally moved to Oklahoma, got stationed there, and was able to go to law school. Much older than most of my counterparts. I went to a private university where some of my classmates had street names named after them because their parents were developers, where their parents gave them a home for their wedding gift. And so there was a little bit of culture shock there, but totally rocked it because I love school and I love to be involved. So I was president of all the things and was still momming essentially as a single parent, geographically separated, all of those things. And as you see in this picture, that is me. That is me. And I looked much different. I'm smiling in this photo. But what I realized later is that I was very unhappy. And that was manifesting itself physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. And so at that time, while my vision was being accomplished, I was not being my best self. And it took a while for me to realize that because, as the first speaker mentioned, we have this idea of what life should look like. And you marry your high school sweetheart. And I had been going through the motions of just doing things because that's what comes next. Not because that's what I wanted to do, not because that was what was best for me, or maybe doing it because it was best for everybody else, or that was the expectation that people had for me. And when I turned 40, it was a pivotal moment for me to really evaluate who I was, where I was, and where I wanted to go. And I'm so thankful for that because that's when I started living a very intentional life. That's when I started putting myself first in a way that I had never done before, and I'm so much happier because of it. And my life has gone on a totally different trajectory than I thought that it would, but it's so much better, and I'm so happy. And again, manifested in the way that I look, the way that I have an outlook on life, and the way that I love. And so very excited about that. The other piece of what I think the versions of our vision look like really have to do with who we're accountable to. And so for me, I'm accountable to my ancestors. And if you look at this first picture, Matonkwa Val is in the audience. I didn't even know she was going to be in here today, but she took this picture, and this is my wife and myself and some of her interns for the Vice President's office, and we are praying and singing for our relatives, our boarding school victim relatives here in Rapid City. I did not know Val when she took this picture. She did not know me, but we were singing this song to honor our ancestors because that's who we're ultimately accountable to. And then, of course, the future generations, and that's part of the work that I do here, but also across Indian country, is really to be accountable to those generations that are coming next so that they can have brighter futures. So I would encourage you all to think about what your approach is. Again, as I've aged a little bit, I've become more intentional and think about why it is that I'm doing things and if that feeds my spirit. And so my approach to all things is that I'm always going to be guided by our traditional values, which another presenter put up for us. One of those traditional values that I struggle with a lot is Woihanble, and that's compassion. But what I realize is that I'm not struggling with compassion for others. That abounds. But I struggle with compassion for myself because I feel guilty about putting myself first. I feel guilty about even caring about myself because it feels like I'm caring about myself more than others. And so I'm on a journey with that. But I am guided by traditional values. I'm unapologetically Indigenous in every space that I am. And that gets a little hairy because, as I said, being biracial, who knows what each of you sees when you look at me? And when I was in high school, I think that mattered to me a lot. Like, what do people see? Do they see an African-American woman? Do they see an Indigenous woman? What is it that they see? But as I got older, I knew exactly who I was. And I think as we look at the different identities that we all hold, that it's important to center ourselves in that. Who are you? Who are you at the end of the day? Who are you to your ancestors? Who are you in your heart and spirit? And so, unapologetically Indigenous in every space that I'm in. And the other thing, and this is more of a work thing and a Tasha thing for sure, is that I'm always going to uphold tribal sovereignty in every space. I don't think enough people really understand what that means. We won't go into that today, but find me after. But it's important. It's important because you will see movements like Land Back, and you will see things that say this is our land or you're on native land, and I don't think those necessarily have to be antagonistic taglines. It's the truth. One of my favorite mantras is the truth is the truth. No matter what we do, the truth is always going to be the truth. But I do think that it's important to acknowledge that tribal peoples were the first peoples of this land, and that, as you can see from the lineup today, we have much to share and teach and exchange with everyone who lives here. So now we'll get to my work. 4 minutes left. So I've always been invested in young people, and I didn't know why until recently someone asked me, and it really came back to the modeling of my grandmother. She worked with youth substance misuse, and she called all those her kids, and we would go to some of the roughest areas and pick them up, and she just loved on them in the same way that she loved on me, and so I got to see that. So I'm dedicated to empowering youth and families. We use a multi-generational approach because in Indian country, our kinship systems are wide. They don't stop with just blood. They don't stop with just aunts and uncles. It goes wide. And so the other thing that I'm very invested in is giving young people the freedom to dream. I think that a lot of people, particularly in impoverished communities, in brown and black communities, have never had the opportunity to dream. They're worried about where food is coming from. Will they have a home? What is mom and dad doing? So I want to give space for young people to have the freedom to dream. And for our young people, that comes through reconstituting our lifeways, our traditional lifeways. Those are things that have served us well since time immemorial, and those are the things that are going to continue our resilience into the future as people. And I think these things cross cultural lines. If we really think about that and internalize what that means, it's not just an Indian thing, it's a people thing. So, I guess that one got messed up a little bit. But, so because of my work, I've had some really amazing opportunities and things happen. It's never the intention of the work, but it happened because I am being intentional with the work that I'm doing. And so I was 40 under 40 in Indian country, an American Express NGen fellow, and then just this year, I think it was just this month, I was announced as an Obama Leader USA, one of the first ever in the country. And for each of these things that we would call accolades, I see them as opportunities, not for me as a person, but for me to elevate the voice of our people, of the work that I do and the issues that are near and dear to my heart. So in the decision to be intentional and true to myself about the work that I'm doing, these things happen. And I'm so thankful and grateful that they do, and it's not just because of me. I really believe that there are people behind me, both in this world and in the spirit world, that are making this happen. So currently I work for Friends of the Children. I'm the National Director of Tribal Programs. And I worked in Indian country for a long time with youth, tribal youth programs and juvenile healing wellness courts. But I had never seen anything like this. We have paid professional mentors, and so that's what I was like, paid professional mentors, what? That's a thing? Someone's whole job is to mentor youth? And so we choose youth 4 to 6 years old. They have the highest risk factors and lowest protective factors. And we use that 2-generational approach, or multi-generational if we're talking within our Indian country relatives. And we give them that mentor for 12 years plus, no matter what. So we consistently stay in their lives and the lives of their families. And because of that, 83% graduate high school, 93% avoid the juvenile justice system, 98% avoid teen parenting, and 92% enroll in post-secondary education, serve our country in the armed forces, or enter the workforce at a livable wage. And so that's what I get to do every day. Actually, the first Indigenous-specific chapter is here in Rapid City, in the 30-year history of Friends of the Children. And so that's a different version of their vision. And Val Big Eagle is the executive director. She's in the audience, as I mentioned. And the whole staff and approach is grounded in Lakota culture and lifeways. And so really looking at what that version of Friends of the Children looks like in Indian country. So I get to lead that effort all over. So So finally, I just want to end by saying that our visions and versions are only limited by our imagination. I truly believe that. I know there are systemic issues that we face and challenges, but those challenges are opportunities to really look within ourselves and see what can be and what the possibilities exist in our lives. So thank you. Sutis, Iram.